time to get this thing back to the racetrack. But before we do, we need to dyno it because we've made some changes. Hear a bloody loud noise in the background. It's because it is freezing this weekend. And I need to run it up on the trans brake just to make sure everything's all good with the changes we've made. And the reason it's so loud, I'll show you, is because a cold start on methanol ain't no joke. So I've got the preheat going on there to put a bit of temperature into the coolant system. So rather than having to kick the car over it, I literally think it's like 5-degree water temp at first when I walked out here. Hopefully by now it'll be 40 and we should be right to go. All right, let's kick into the guts and see how we go. I can breathe again because yeah, it's all been open now. Vents out here pretty quickly in that. So yeah, super successful test there. Happy with that. Now, obviously, I don't know if I went over the changes in this last time, what we actually did, but I added larger fuel injectors. So we used to have four FT 550 fuel injectors, and that was it. So I think some of the issues I was having was I didn't have enough fuel injectors. So what I've done is, I had the 4 FT 550s and 2 deckers. So what I've done is, instead of just like adding maybe 2 more deckers, is I've gone and totally overshot the mark in terms of hopefully in potential fuel. And I've removed 2 of the 550 fuel techs and added in 2 of the 820 or 850 fuel tech injectors. And I've also added in 2 fuel nozzles in each runner in the intake manifold. So they come out here, fuel nozzle, you'll see one's for fuel for the nitrous and the other lines go here, and it's going to be really hard to see, but there's one, and you might be able to see the other one over the other side. Not really, the other one's just over yonder. And what they do is they just add even more fuel. Now, I've got some pretty big jets in there. Most guys will use these for, in terms of like, see the Puerto Rican guys use them all the time, and that they'll often add one here to cool the intake charge, just to take a whole heap of heat out of the intake, and then they'll add 2 in the manifold, and they often use those to tune with, so to speak. So that they might have the EFI tune up locked, essentially. So the tuners put the EFI tune up, and then as the weather changes or whatever they're doing, they just slightly change the jets. So I did ask a question around just to get a ballpark figure on what size jets I should run in there, and my God, it was like I was asking for a downloadable tune-up file to run like a 650 or something. So they're very protective of what size jets they run, but yeah, I'm not using the jets in that same manner. I actually bring the jets on at about 7 pound of boost, and they're literally there to dump a heap of more fuel even on the trans brake to help it, really take off. But then they're just there as extra fuel that's always there, and then I fine tune with the EFI system, with the fuel tech. So I'm not really using them the same way as those guys are using them. I'm really using them almost as another set of deckers. And to put them in, I think another pair of deckers would have cost me $700 or $800, even if you can find them. Whereas this, I already had all the lines and fittings here, so $0. I think both the nozzles were about $50 each, so it's like $100. I didn't have to do any other wiring. I didn't have to do anything else. So yeah, I mean, $100 with stuff that I've got here versus like 700 if I can find it. Yeah, I think why not? Still running on a budget here. This is not unlimited budget racing. Got to make do with what I can do with that. So, yeah, let's have a quick look at the data log, I guess, and see how quickly this thing's coming up on boost. So here is the tune-up. Oh no, secrets, can't show anything. No, there's no secrets, so I couldn't care less. No one be looking at what I'm bloody doing and copying it anyway, surely. So you can see here, starting time down here says 0, and where I've got the cursor is basically on 4 seconds. So that means from when I go pretty much full throttle to when it is at almost 6,700 RPM, and don't worry about the wavy boost. It's about 25 pound of boost. That's in 4 seconds, which is killer. Now, the reason it's wavy is on boost here, you can see it goes up and down, is because the Fuel Tech has not a boost cut, but it's essentially got 2 levels of boost cut. So one is where you can set a maximum boost threshold that you don't want to go over, and it tries to maintain that threshold. So, and then it's got the other one that's a super hard cut. So my hard cut is at like 50 pound of boost. I think my maximum boost during a normal run and boost ramp is about 45. So what that means, bud, is if it gets up to 45, it dumps all the pressure off the dome of the wastegate, and it tries to maintain that 45. It might oscillate around that 45. And the reason why that's so great is if you only had a hard cut, you're in a race, hit a hard cut, that's it, race over, and you just lost. Whereas this sort of soft cut where it tries to maintain a max boost allows you to still run that, might oscillate 40 to 45 pound, but you'll still be in the race, and you might have a chance of actually getting a lap and getting some data and stuff like that. So there's a boost for that. And there's also one for the 2-step. Now, the 2-step, I had it set at 25 PSI, and I forgot to raise it because right now I was just trying to get a map in the ECU, and I raised the 2-step to 7,000 RPM, and I put an extra 2 pound of boost on the dome, which means it hit that cut, which means it dumps all the dome pressure, fills it again, dumps it again, fills it again. That's why it was oscillating. So that's all fine. Look at everything else. You can see it goes super rich here, and that's where it takes off as well. And you can see I've got a lot of timing out of it there too. So that is by design because, yeah, the fuel load to keep EGTs in check when I rip a whole heap of timing out of it. This leads to more exhaust volume and hotter exhaust volume, and it really takes off, and it works quite well. If you didn't add the extra fuel, the EGTs, instead of being, around this sort of 630 sort of mark, EGTs will take off to like 750 plus or whatever. And when you're about to start a run where 750 is sort of the max EGT you want to sit at, you're already just putting absolutely unnecessary heat in the engine. So right now I'm launching at like, 630, 650 EGT in Celsius, which means as soon as I take off, there's not a ridiculous amount of heat already in the engine, and you're less likely to hurt something in that early part of the run. So yeah, overall, super happy. Can go to the dyno now and I can test a few things that I want to test. One of them is different types of spark plugs. The other one is the different fuels. So I've got the normal fuel, then I've got the VP M1. I want to test those two. And maybe something else that I might test that people have said, that's no good, you can't use that, you need to use this. Well, I'm going to test it because I have the alternative for that. You'll find out what that is later. But yeah, overall, everything's going well. My intercooler setup's working well. Seeing about, I think it's around 90 on these runs. Obviously it's not running consistently, so it's by the end of like the 2-step, it's at about 90-ish sort of degrees Celsius coming out of the turbo. But going into the intake, where I've got the temp sensor just here, going into there is about 25 degrees. So I'm pretty happy with that where it's at. I don't really want to get colder. I might test running it colder and seeing what it does on the dyno. I think the methanol might want a little bit of heat in the air anyway. So, but I might test it and see what power it makes at 60-degree air temp versus 40 versus 20 versus, I don't know, we'll see if we can go down to even 10 or something, see if it doesn't misfire or whatever. But overall, yeah, pretty happy with where it's at the moment. Right, so I think that wraps up that. I've got very, very small to-do list on this thing. Just before I was about to test after the third test there, the starter motor must have rattled loose by 1 millimeter. The starter motor basically mounts to a plate, which then mounts to the mid plate, and that little plate, if it shakes loose by just even 1 millimeter, it just doesn't sync spot on. So I'm gonna have to make a custom tool to get in there, because they've got their 1/2-inch bolt heads, and they are super hard to get to. So everything's really, this isn't a chassis car, this is a factory chassis and everything, so it's not easy to get to stuff like this. So I need to make a tool that could easily adjust that if I ever need to do it, say at the dyno or at the track, because I think I spent about 35-40 minutes just loosening off 3 bolts, pulling the crowbar in to push the starter over a bit while I tighten up the other 3 bolts. So can't be having that. That's ridiculous. So yeah, other than that, ready for the dyno. Pumped to get out there. It's been a long time coming. I'm hoping now that everything I'm going to take to the dyno will check off all the boxes of what could or was or should be the issue from last time. Hopefully, yeah, we can get out to the track after that. And then once we have a bit of fun with this on the dyno and then at the track, I'll go back full steam ahead on this thing. And yeah, we might do another video on that one very shortly and show you where it's at. As you can see, the interior's in it, and yeah, as you know, it runs. So maybe we'll take that for a lap around the block or something. All right. Until then, I'll see you later.